Yo, yo, yo. Hello and welcome to another Bindplane Community Call. This time in April. And with me today, I have our CEO, Mike. We're going to go through a bunch of new cool updates for today. But before we jump in, I'm going to hand over the microphone to Mike for a quick intro.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, like you said, Mike, I'm the CEO founder of Bindplane and looking forward to talking about OpenTelemetry and what's new in Bindplane and the hotel distribution builder.
Yeah, we
So
have a
appreciate it. Let's
bunch
kick
of
it
cool
off.
new
Yeah,
features.
yeah.
We
There's a
have
lot going
so
on,
many
a
cool.
lot of new things.
Yeah. We just basically came back from KubeCon as well, and it was a bunch of cool updates from KubeCon we have with you. We have to share with you about that as well. But specifically, the OpenTelemetry distro builder is it was a part of a hype item, more or less. There were a lot of people from the community that were super interested in it, especially from the OpenTelemetry collector special user group. And yeah, more about that in a minute. So Mike is going to do a demo. So you're going to have to hold on to your shorts, or what is that the saying? How does that,
Well,
how's that?
I think that's what it is. Yeah, we'll try and cram it all into half an hour. So yeah, we'll rush through it. But there's a lot of things happening this month.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the agenda for today is more or less we'll do our customary what is Bindplane quick intro for everybody that's new to the community. We'll do a KubeCon Europe recap, talk a bit about OpAMP, the supervisor, and how they have grown and all of the interesting things that happened. Of course, the OpenTelemetry distribution builder, and we'll also do a quick recap of all of the new Bindplane features for this last month. And yeah, jumping into what is Bindplane, as always, it's a OpenTelemetry native telemetry pipeline where the core functionality is to provide a unified platform to monitor all of your telemetry data across all of your sources and destinations. The point of it is that we want to make it super easy to collect and process your telemetry data, no matter what vendor you use. So the point of it is to be built on OpenTelemetry standards, which are all agnostic to whatever vendor you want to use. But we also want to make it super easy to run a fleet of collectors. So if you have an existing fleet of however many thousands of collectors, we're here to help you simplify your infrastructure and basically make it super easy to manage at scale. And of course, it all boils down to cost at the end, where we're really, really bullish on making the cost itself go down, just because we make the transformation pipeline and all of the processing much, much easier and visual to build. And yeah, the architecture for Bindplane is actually not that complex, where the central part is your existing pipeline, which is your pipeline built on OpenTelemetry. So you own your data. You don't send it to us. We don't do anything with that. What we do is we use OpAMP, the new Open Agent Management Protocol, to communicate with Bindplane as a control plane. So Bindplane is only really interacting with your collectors on a management level, not on the data plane. So no data actually goes to Bindplane except for any config that you want to push down to your collectors, any metrics that the collectors themselves emit. So essentially we're kind of just watching the watchers. Is that? I feel as if that's from a movie, Mike. Like I really, or is it just me like watching the
No, it
watcher?
is.
It's
It's a Marvel one, but I don't remember which one. The
yeah,
Watchmen, right? It's
yeah.
we're watching the Watchers.
Who's watching the
Yeah, but
watchers?
I think it's an important point about Bindplane that a lot of people don't you don't necessarily see it intuitively, but Bindplane is an orchestration layer of all of your OpenTelemetry collectors, and so it doesn't become a bottleneck, especially when you're starting to scale. And that's a key thing that is not always true, right? Depending on what you're using for to build a pipeline. And so that's a big benefit, right? If you're managing or orchestrating, and then you let the OpenTelemetry collectors do what they're meant to do, which is process massive amounts of data and collect data from any signal, transmit it wherever you want it to go. And then you have your infrastructure built on, core OpenTelemetry collectors and open standards.
Yeah, so you're still future proofing yourself with OpenTelemetry, meaning that it's still yours and it still conforms with the open standards. We're just watching the watchers. We're control plane. Yeah, now for the fun KubeCon Europe recap, I am very happy to say that it was the biggest KubeCon to date. So there were roughly 13,000 people attending at KubeCon in London, and it was absolutely massive. We even did a little OpenTelemetry recap for you. We took a few minutes to go through all of the new and fun things that happened within the OpenTelemetry community. Specifically one presentation that was by the governance committee of the OpenTelemetry project. And there are a bunch of new cool things that they announced, especially that the JavaScript SDK 2.0 was released, the OpenTelemetry demo 2.0 was released. There were a bunch of new updates to the eBPF auto instrumentation for Go, but specifically profiling, since it was introduced, it now has supports 12 components in the OpenTelemetry collector. So it's really ramping up development for the profiler, but we're also getting a bunch of new cool things for the collector itself, where 16 modules were elevated to 1.x maturity, and there's a new OpenTelemetry Weaver. Bet you didn't know about that. It's a new way to integrate semantic conventions directly inside of your development workflow. And I have a good feeling that the Weaver is going to be one of those things that within the next couple of years is just going to be there in your pipeline, like in your development workflow, helping you do basically everything you need to do with OpenTelemetry. And yeah, what's coming next in the OpenTelemetry community is that obviously semantic conventions, but also a lot of work on the OpenTelemetry collector is going to be ramped up, especially with OpAMP that we're going to discuss a bit later as well. Actually, Andy from our team did a presentation. You can see a photo here. Andy doing a presentation on OpAMP. And what's really important about OpAMP is that it's the magic sauce that lets collectors communicate with an OpAMP server, which is essentially a way to manage your collectors and push configs and basically do all of this control plane stuff with a set of collectors or a fleet of collectors. And now, once I have done the little intro of OpAMP itself, I do just want to give Andy another shout out, because I watched the presentation live and it was so good. So I can't wait for it to go live and share the video with everybody. We did do a few YouTube shorts on our Bindplane YouTube. So if you want to jump over there and see some highlights, you can do that as well. But definitely rest assured, I will share the full video once we have it from the people over at KubeCon.
What was the biggest surprise for you at KubeCon? I wish I had been there. I wish I was able to make it this year, but it sounded great.
I think it was and obviously, yeah, the OpenTelemetry, because we had an OpenTelemetry observatory booth that was specified only for maintainers and contributors and anybody that wanted to learn more. So we had a lot of people there just asking OpenTelemetry questions. Like, what do you think about the growth of OpAMP in the collector? Do you think OpAMP should have a super back? It was a lot of cool questions there. Especially, we had a conversation with some people that work at Ericsson, and they were explaining how radio waves, they had to figure out how to send telemetry across towers. It's so above my intelligence level. So they're incredibly smart people there, and I think that was the biggest highlight. But from a OTel point of view, probably the growth of the collector itself. There's so much work getting put into the collector, and so much it's just mental thought process into how do we make this thing as good as possible. So I think that was probably my key takeaway.
Yeah, it's cool.
And then that's basically what this whole OpAMP deal is about. Just to give you a rundown on Andy's presentation, because I just found it so interesting, is that because of this new OpAMP protocol, you get a way of communicating between an API server and your collectors. So the way that happens is that the collector has this new OpAMP extension, which is again developed. Why I was so blown away by the fact that so much work was put into the collector. So once you use that OpAMP extension, you can basically use it to communicate with a supervisor, and then a supervisor is another process that the team, the OpenTelemetry maintainers and contributors have built out. That it's essentially a process that manages these collectors, that speaks in OpAMP language, that in turn communicates with the OpAMP server. So you can now, at this state, you can essentially use whatever collector you already have, build it with this OpAMP extension, add in a supervisor, and you're ready to go. You can immediately start talking OpAMP. And that was just a big deal for me because, dude, it's already there. You need to build your collector. And essentially what that would look like is any collector that you do have, you can reuse the manifest, or you can reuse the modules that you're using for it, add on this OpAMP extension, run a supervisor in front of it, and you're ready to go. And that was just one of those. There were actually multiple talks at KubeCon that were specifically mentioning how this new process works together. And I just find all of this fascinating. Like, the only real thing you need: a supervisor binary, you need a collector binary, a config file, and you need an OpAMP server. And since Bindplane is essentially an OpAMP server,
yeah, I was just gonna say, one of the cool things about the OpenTelemetry project is you see, it's kind of kicked off as this project to like, hey, we're all doing this. Everyone in the industry has their own implementation of this thing, and maybe we can just come together and create the best version of it. And that's where you have the SDKs and the standards and the collector. Everyone was doing that separately in a proprietary way, and we even had open source versions that were broken out into all these different projects. We're trying to pull it together. And then OpAMP is another example of that, where we had our own proprietary way of managing agents remotely. Everyone had their own way if they were doing remote management. And so we all came together and said, all right, well, let's try and standardize this as well and have an open standard for managing these. And the same thing with the supervisor. These are all best practices that people had figured out kind of independently. We sort of took the best of all of them, and that's how you come up with OpAMP, and now you come up with the supervisor model. So it's exciting to see that now as an open standard.
Yeah, man. Once we focus on open source and put our minds together, it's breaking down silos, I guess. Is that also from a movie?
Not one that I know, but probably.
And of course, this all kind of segues into having to build your own distro off the collector. And that's where I'm going to hand it over to Mike for the actual authority on building distros.
Yeah, this is a cool project, and we just released it, I guess the first day of KubeCon. It's still active and actively developed, or a lot of development going on in this project. But the goal of this was to make it really easy to create your own OpenTelemetry distribution. And so what we're providing, and this is an open source utility, but it's an extensible way to build and then release your own distributions. And if you've been around OpenTelemetry for a while, the OpenTelemetry collector builder exists. So there's a utility that will makes it easy to build binaries. But what we've seen with customers and people that want to build their own distro is that there's a lot of other stuff that has to happen and that can make it really challenging, right? It's like the whole CI/CD pipeline. Once you can build a binary, but then you want to put this out into production on 100,000 systems, and you want to make sure it's versioned correctly, and that you have a really consistent way of doing this. And that isn't easy. And maybe it was a year ago, I did a webinar on building a custom collector, and it was an hour, and I felt like I barely scratched the surface. And here's what you actually need to do to put something together that's really solid, and you have a good release process. This is trying to simplify that down. And so with this, we have a GitHub action right? So you can just add the OpenTelemetry distribution builder to a repo, add a manifest, and then you have a distro, right? You just create a release, and that's going to create those the binaries and the packages that you need, and then keep them versioned. But you can also run it locally, and at the core, it's really just it's a Docker container that is built to take a manifest in and output all of your packages in a release format. We try to bundle a bunch of things together, and there's even a Google Cloud build script that you can use, and so it can take a lot of forms. I expect it to expand into add a bunch of additional functionality as well. But yeah, this is built on the OTel collector builder, so that is still the core, and that is a really key utility for building collectors. Makes it a lot easier to build those binaries, but then it adds in a bunch of additional steps just to make it simpler, make it really easy to do this. And we had a lot of questions about, okay, what's the difference between the collector builder? And so when we're thinking about the collector builder, it's focused on taking a manifest, and it's a predefined way of identifying what are the different components of your collector, all in one file. And in the collector builder, OCB pulls down all the source. It can build the binaries and makes that piece really simple. So what the distro builders adding on top of that is can do that for multiple platforms automatically, can build out packages. So adds an additional release step, have a GitHub release automation, and then gives you a process for updating that consistently and making it easy to manage that and keep it under version control. And just a quick visual to help. When we were thinking about this, what we wanted to do was say, give it a manifest, and we'll give you all the release artifacts, right? And that's the simplest way to think about it. And so we do things within the distro builder, like we auto detect your build dependencies. So what version of Go should you be using? What version of OCB should you be using? We'll package a supervisor. So which supervisor version is compatible with this? Generate the distribution package files. So all the files that you need for the Linux packages, make sure that they're set correctly with your distribution, with what's unique to your distribution. Using OCB as a core piece to download and all those component source files. Has to go releaser to generate those packages for distribution, and then version those and release them in GitHub or somewhere else, or just have those packages available in a bucket somewhere if you want. So that's the process, and just by its nature, the intent is for it to be really simple. So I'll show you, what it looks like in practice. Okay, so you should have, I created a new repository, and this is my hotel distro, and it has two files in this repository. It has a manifest, and if you're familiar with an OpenTelemetry manifest, this will be familiar to you. If not, it's a lot of content, but it's fairly simple. It has things like information about your distribution, the name of it, your description, the version, and then it has all the components that are a part of this from within OpenTelemetry. So the extensions, the exporters, processors, receivers, connectors, providers, and this is where people find the manifest you're looking at is really similar to what would be like a collector contrib manifest. So it has a lot of components in it. And some customers want to cut this down to just what they need to keep it really, really small. And so you can do that really easily. I have the large manifest here. Well, let's look at the one other file that we have in this repository. And that's just a GitHub workflow. And what this does is, if you've used workflows before, there's boilerplate here. It's going to run on Ubuntu, and it's going to use the custom action that we just released. It's OTel distro builder v1. And it takes a manifest.yaml that's in this repository. And this command right here is going to build that for you. So whenever you create a new tag, whenever you create a release, it's going to run that build. It's going to, you can optionally upload those to GitHub. And it's going to create a release. So it's going to take everything that was built and then use GitHub's release process and make that available within this repository. So you literally have two files, you check them into a repository, and you're ready to go. And so I'll make a change and show what this looks like, and I'll just do it right here, editor. And so I mentioned that we wanted to maybe, we want to remove a lot of these things. And I'm going to do this randomly. This is not recommended as a best practice, but we'll say those are the ones that we don't want. I also don't want these.
Just eyeballing it. Let's just remove. Who needs these?
And it's highly recommended that you're smarter about which you choose and which you don't. But if you look at this and you said, well, maybe I know I need Active Directory, I know I need host metrics, but I don't need any of these others, and I'm confident that I'm not going to need those for some period. You may want a smaller release with fewer things that are available there, and just have it tailored to what you're using it for. And that's a really reasonable approach, and lots of folks are doing that. If you also wanted to add in something custom, a custom component, you may want to do that as well. But I've made a few changes to this. We'll leave the remainder, and I'm going to increment the version to 002. Commit this, random removal. And so now I have a repo, it's checked in, everything's version controlled, but nothing's happening yet. So we'll use the standard release workflow, GitHub, draft a new release. Just gonna tag it like I would a normal release. And you may have a different process, maybe in your environment or in your company, you have release scripts or something that you're using, and that would all work as long as it's creating a tag. This is going to automatically work for you. And so I'm going to publish it at v002, and it was an update to the manifest. So the thing we'll see is it's going to kick off a build. And if everything is working correctly, you can actually go in and look at what's happening. And we won't watch all of it because it does take a little bit of time, maybe 15 minutes, which is actually a lot faster than sometimes if you're running locally. And the nice thing about it is because we're running this within a container within GitHub, a lot of these packages, you can get them, download them very quickly. And that tends to be the longest or one of the things that takes the most time when building out a large collector, for example. So pulling down some tools, back and we see the builder started. So it does a few things and pulls in a manifest, it's reading the configuration, identifying different components of that. It will download or pull in any specific build requirements as needed. It also detects things like which version of Go do we need to run, which supervisor version should we include, which OCB version should we use, all based on the manifest, even if you don't specify that specifically. So this piece will take a little bit of time, and we can come back and look at it, but since we already ran it a few minutes ago, I'll show you what it looks like after. And actually, I'll go into this version really quickly. So it was 21 minutes for a full collector contrib build. And just see a couple of the other items. So we pull in OCB, we pull down the source, we're gonna generate that, grab the latest supervisor, process templates, build up that release with Go Releaser, and then we're gonna actually create that new release. And we'll see that, go back to our distro. So we have a new release that's in progress. But we'll look at the current release, and this is the one I did just before this call started. And what you'll see is we have everything that you would typically see, and so it's going to be familiar, or it'll look familiar if you've seen OpenTelemetry contrib or core release. We have all the packages. This one was built for Linux ARM64, so it has what you'd expect for all the Linux packages, checksums available as well, the bill of materials, and everything's here and it's available. So if you you can point your systems at this as a source of truth. You can pull down the latest, and as you have new releases, those new builds will be available in the same location. So it really takes everything, kind of pulls it into a nicely packaged release process, makes it easy to manage just from that manifest, and simplifies things down quite a bit. Like I said, this is something that's still, we're adding features pretty quickly. We'd love to hear if people get a chance to try it out, what they're looking for. And I think there's some cool additions that we'll be including in this over the next few weeks as well. So I'll pause there. But did I miss anything, Eda?
No. I think this is, it's so cool, man. Is that the fact that you just give it a manifest and it just figures itself out and outputs all of the assets that you would ever need. You can also choose which assets, if it's ARM, if it's AMD, if you want to run it in Docker. Like it's really, really cool. And for the new features Mike was also just mentioning, so we're also working on giving it just whatever config you already have for your collector, and then it generating a manifest from that config, and then just going through the steps that Mike was just showing now. And that's really cool. That's so you go from, okay, so I have this particular config in whatever, let's say I have a hotel collector contrib version. I'm running this config that only has, 10 different modules that it's essentially using. Why don't I just build a collector with my config that only has those 10 modules? It's really cool. So
and it allows for a workflow that we usually recommend to customers, which is, if you start out with contrib or the Bindplane distribution, make sure, which has a lot of these components that you would need. Then you're building out configurations. Then which components, you have them all available. You determine which ones you need. Now you can build a collector that just has that set of components based on the configurations. So it really simplifies down that whole process.
Yeah, and with that segue, we have an amazing new update as well for the Bindplane features of the month. We have something we like calling "Bring Your Own Collector." That is from bring your own beer when you go to a party. That's essentially this. And there's a really nice blog post from Ryan, our head of product, essentially explaining what it is. It's right now it's a private preview feature where all of this that Mike was just explaining, where you can build your own collector, we decided to leverage all that and have it as part of the product, more or less. So you can jump in, do all of your usual Bindplane flows, but also get the option of building a collector exactly for your needs. And that's just, building on top of the user-friendly or user experience developer friendliness that we have. I think that's a phenomenal, amazing take on that as well. And yeah, that's the highlight for the month, I'm gonna say. But out of other really cool feature updates that we have, we now finally have snapshot recordings as well. We've also done some live preview optimizations and added in a few new sources for S3 events and GCS hydration and NetFlow. Specifically, out of all of these three, there's one I really want to show you. And that's specifically the way to record snapshots. Essentially, the way you do it is you jump into your organization and then you go down to settings and you just toggle this little allow recordings of telemetry snapshots. And that's pretty much all you need. Then if you go into one of your configs, and let's say I want to look at so this is just my local Mac OS, and I'm just basically sending to nowhere. But the point I want to show here is, let's say I want to look at my metrics, and for this particular processor, let's say I just want to save these so I can look at them tomorrow. I can just do click the save button, and I'll say metrics from April 9. Actually, I need to tie them together like so. And if I do save these, I can go ahead and check from all of my saved metrics or saved snapshots. I can go ahead and check them whenever I want. And that is pretty cool. That is really cool. And then of course I can also just do live preview as well. And there's one more thing that I think is really cool here as well, is if you want to reroute some of your configs, we've made it a bit more simple to do so. If you want to do another processor, you could just click and add another processor. If you want to reroute them, let's say you want to delete this processor, just go in and delete it. And then if you want to connect it back, now you get that blue the thing around. And it's so nice. I don't know. I've never been more excited about such a small thing. I don't know if it's for no reason or not, but I like it. So
it's a nice addition. Yeah.
I really like it. So
it just makes it a lot easier. I think it's, a lot of these things you could accomplish before, but man, it's just nice to reroute it and just drag and drop basically where you want your telemetry flow. But those recordings are nice. I like the recordings because I think when you're working on, if you're really trying to reduce data, sometimes you have pretty consistent feed, but then you see something maybe a little bit odd and you want to just, okay, I'm going to record this so that I can reference it later or show someone else and tell them, okay, this is how we need to process this unique set of telemetry coming through.
Yeah, especially if you've configured a really complex set of processors and bundled them together and you have this particular flow and you want to record that and save that so you know for whatever other use case you have, like this is a particular snapshot, a saving of a snapshot that I want to have for whatever other thing I might be building. So yeah, I think that's so cool. Yeah, and then rounding out the community call for today, we're going to do a quick community shout out. Mike is, if you didn't figure it out, at a hotel in Vegas for Google Next right now. So he has taken time out of the conference to spend time with us. That's very cool. And yeah, if you're around, if you want to know more, Mike is doing a talk about mastering OpenTelemetry with some of the Google folks there. And we also have a couple of Google engineers doing a presentation on Bindplane called Route, Reduce, and Redact. So definitely something to check out. If you're there, do feel free to connect with Mike as well. Yeah, we're also doing a workshop.
Definitely stop by and say hi if you're around.
Yeah. So I mean, that's just, why not, right? If you're already there. Yeah, and finally, we're doing a workshop for SecOps, one more SecOps workshop at the end of April. They just ended up being really, really popular, and a lot of our customers and you in the community asked for more. So we are here to deliver. And yeah, I think with the Q&A, we must have done such a good job that nobody really had any questions. So it's pat on the back for the demos. Yeah, I think we're at time as well. So really, from myself and from the whole team, thank you for joining for another community call. Stay tuned for the workshop at the end of the month, and then of course another community call next month. Mike, any last words?
No, I think it's a great call. Thanks for inviting me on, and thanks everyone for joining.
Every time is a pleasure. Thank you, and yeah, see you guys next month.
All right, thanks everyone.